I'm Jacqueminet. I'm Associate Professor of Sustainability at ESSEC Business School in the Department of Public and Private Policy. And broadly speaking, I do research in the non-market strategy field with a focus on corporate social responsibility and sustainability practices, trying to understand what large organizations in particular do or say in the domain of sustainability, why there is so much heterogeneity in what they do, although they might be facing the same pressures from their external environment, and also how a series of stakeholders might react to these practices or to these disclosure approaches. And so when I say a series of stakeholders, I mean, for example, the media or employees or prospective employees or financial actors, financial markets or analysts. Yes, so my interest is primarily phenomenon-driven. Before joining academia and doing my PhD, I was a consultant in climate change and sustainability for a few years. And in that context, I had missions for companies asking me to try and understand what their subunits were doing and why they were not implementing the practices that they designed to the same extent. And so I tried to understand what was going on at the subunit level, and this is where my interest starting from. So really rooted in what I could observe as a consultant before joining the PhD. And ever since the PhD, I still tend to ask questions based on things that I observed in the real world, what companies are doing or not doing, and try to investigate why that is. So in this paper, we're looking at analysts in particular. So analysts are a type of intermediaries in the sense that they compile, interpret, and summarize information on firms to give a recommendation on their performance that then will be used by financial markets, but also other stakeholders potentially may be interested in these recommendations that they produce. And so there's a lot of literature looking at what firms do and the type of tactics they may employ to frame the information that they share. But there is less work trying to understand the process through which analysts and intermediaries in general process that information and how that may affect their evaluations. And in the context of environmental information, given that information is so complex, and again, there might be suspicions that firms are not being genuine about their performance and try to influence their evaluators, that might introduce some kind of biases, and analysts may be a little bit worried or think that information is not as useful as maybe other information that they have at hand. Therefore, somewhat biases their evaluations in a rather negative way. So as I told you, I'm very deeply interested in the phenomenon of sustainability practices adoption by companies. And of course, beyond understanding what they do, why they do it, and how others may react, I am interested in the impact in terms of societal impact. So impacts on the environment, impact in communities of these practices. Do they actually work? We know that there are some firms that don't do what they say. That's what we call policy practice decoupling. But there are also firms that do things that they hope will work out, but they might not. So this is means-ends decoupling. So they put some effort, but then the actual outcomes are unclear. And so I think, of course, anything that has to do with experiments in the domain of sustainability is extremely interesting and promising. There's a lot of work already going in that direction. But some of it is really confined to small organizations or specific programs. Conducting large-scale experiments with large organizations is a lot trickier. Having them open their doors for us to conduct such experiments is not easy. Okay, and so beyond those experiments, I have to admit I'm not an expert in experiments. I usually work with archival data that I collect and run regressions on them or other type of approaches. And so in that case, I'm hoping that soon enough we'll have more standardized data. Like I said earlier, the lack of standardized data is a problem for intermediaries. That's also, of course, a problem for us researchers. And so there are a number of initiatives in the EU in particular aiming to standardize that information. And so that means we would have access to more information on what firms are actually doing, which would get us a step closer to understanding what works and what doesn't work. In particular, I'm quite interested in understanding how incentives of decision makers in firms can help trigger more sustainable behaviors. Okay, so that's a very good question, and depending who I talk to, I may come up with a different answer, because some of what guides our decisions are the constraints that we have and the demands of the organizations in which we are working. And so, I've been working in organizations that tend to put a strong emphasis on publishing in a very narrow set of journals. So I've really put a lot of effort trying to publish in, again, this relatively narrow set of journals. Which means on the one hand, you really tailor what you do to those journals, so that's quite efficient. On the other hand, maybe it takes more time because there are only so few of these. And so I guess that's why I ended up publishing in those journals. So the way I think about publishing in them, so first, they change a little bit sometimes in terms of what their objectives are, if there's a new editor. And so I really try to be careful and look at what is their message, what kind of message do they send to me as well, as a potential reviewer, in terms of what the expectations are from reviewers. That's quite helpful to understand what is needed. And of course, I try to identify a conversation in the journal that my research may contribute to, right? So this is, I think, the main important point is there a conversation in that journal that I can contribute to? If not, certainly there isn't a good fit. If so, then the next step is to understand what kind of research do these journals like, what kind of framing, do they really like very theoretical content, are they okay with more exploratory kind of papers, do they like mixed methods, what kind of quantitative versus qualitative, whether it's conceptual research do they publish. So I guess first would be understanding the conversation, and second would be a mix of looking at recent papers and see what they look like, and also the messages that are published on the website or that I receive as a reviewer for these journals as to what the objectives of the journal are, and the type of articles that may welcome. Sometimes that also changes. Some journals, at some point may say, oh, we will have like a fast track. Management Science did that at some point with shorter papers. Or communication that says, oh, we will have discussion papers, or we don't have point content point anymore. So these kind of things may vary. And so sometimes you prepare a paper thinking that's a good fit, and this is this particular type of paper, or it's a research note. And then that format does not exist anymore. So you need to be careful about that as well. So maybe from that perspective, having a full paper is always maybe a safer option that then maybe in the review process may be converted in something else. But if you start with a format that is very specific to a journal, well, then first, if it doesn't make it there, you have to write the paper anyway. And even for it to be published in that particular journal, it's likely that it should start as a regular journal and then is converted into something else. Okay, that's a great question. I had to answer that question already quite a few times. And, a reasonable answer would be, these are the rules. This is how you should behave. Do as I say, not as I do. But what I'm going to tell you is what I did, and then clearly not an encouragement to do the same, but just to show you that there are many ways in which you can be successful in this in this profession, and that's one of the beauties of it. So I had 2 kids during my PhD. Not advisable. I was told, don't do that. I did it anyway. I work primarily with junior colleagues. I was told, work with senior colleagues. That will help you with the review process. Probably, but with junior colleagues, you have interests that are really aligned, and you all want to make it and fast, and everybody is involved and collaborating, and you don't have to wait forever if everything goes fine for them to get back to you, because you have, again, incentives that are very much aligned. So I tend not to follow advice that I receive, so I'm a bit hesitant to give any. But I think the one thing that is crucial is study something that you are passionate about, because it lasts for a very long time. And even if you study something that you're passionate about, by the time a paper gets published, you're sick of it, or at least I am sick of my papers by the time they get published, even though I study something I'm passionate about. So I think that's really important. And also, try to have some consistency. I guess, again, as a researcher, I don't think I have a very strong consistency as to the research or theoretical lenses that I apply in my research. But at least I have some consistency in terms of the phenomena that I'm interested in, and I talk about them in the classroom, and I use them in my research, and these are the news articles that I like to read, and if I meet practitioners, these are the topics that I talk about. So again, find something that you're passionate about, because you'll be talking about it really, really all the time in all domains of your job, be that teaching, engaging with practitioners of research or research. And the other thing that I want to suggest is that don't worry as much. Think that this is a job, and like any other job, there's a whole job market out there. And so you might have personal constraints that mean that you are bounded to a particular geography, for example. So that adds an extra constraint, but that also happens in other jobs as well. And it's a two-sided market. So schools, they look for candidates. So you have something to offer, and so don't undermine yourself, undervalue yourself, and think, oh, I'll never make it. It's not about making it. It's just about finding a job, right? If it doesn't work in a particular place, the fit is not good, you don't like the place doesn't reward you the way you think it should, well, then you can go somewhere else, right? So, take a step back and realize that it's not about making it, it's about finding a working environment in which you feel like you fit well. And I think that took me a while to figure out. I think initially when I started my career, I was really thinking about, number of papers, that next paper, and it's rejected, that's the end of my career. Of course not, right? So there will always be the next place. And when I say next, I don't mean that it's not as good. I just mean that it's a different one, the next one for you, where the fit might be better. So you have something to offer. And if it's not publishing in top journals every 6 months, then it's something else. And there are a lot of organizations that will be interested in that. So remember what you are passionate about, and that you have something to offer to hiring organizations. I would like to thank Storm and emlyon for hosting me. I'm excited to be here. It's a great environment, a great campus, and I look forward to conversations with colleagues here.